start with a conversation about camping
Could just be funny to have. Maybe we'll cut it out, but we'll always have that for us because we have funny conversations
because
to begin with.
camping.
Um, so we uh we chose them because they're they camp often, and there are those levels of people who are like actively bad at camping who like just don't really enjoy being outside. It's like that, the fucking stepmom from the Parent Trap situation where she just like doesn't want to be in nature at all,
Yeah.
uh yeah, and that's the reference that I went with, and I have no problem with that. But that's obviously not fun. But then there's like people that are capable of camping that just don't do it much, which is cool. But like to go at a time when we decided that camping was a good activity because we're not necessarily comfortable getting super close to other people yet.
Right.
But we you know we decided we would be cool getting as close as kind of they would be okay with within reason, but also that like we each have our own set of camping stuff. So like we're not really gonna share stuff. We're gonna bring our own food, and so are they. And
Hmm.
like we have our own tent and site, and we rented like two sites right next to each other, so that
Okay.
we would just be have our own sites but be close.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
Um, yeah, and so but with that middle level of people, like you're good for camping, you just like don't camp, so
Right.
you end up not thinking of stuff. You know, you don't realize sometimes that when you go camping, like, okay, I brought paper plates because that's a thing you might think to bring, but you forgot that you're also going to need utensils, and you're also probably going to need like a way to wash some dishes unless you bring disposable stuff or like whatever it is. Like like we have,
I feel like with my past and having gone camping several times when I was younger, I'd probably fall somewhere between the that level and the camps regularly
right.
because
So
like I used to go camping like 10 or 15 times a year with the Boy Scouts.
yeah, yeah, I remember you were a Boy Scout, and
And
that right there, like you're pretty much good.
yeah, but the last time, I mean, it's probably been more than a decade since I've been camping.
Fair. It's also partially, I feel like, about the activities because obviously, like when you camp, although very interesting thing, and this is kind of a whole separate conversation. But when we went to this place this weekend, it was French Creek State Park in Pennsylvania. It was very nice. Um, and but I learned about camping as a vacation. I didn't come from a family that does that. I didn't know anyone that does that. But I never thought of that. But there are people that do camping as a vacation. So like this campground, which was in a state park, had some resources that also had nearby by the lake. There was like a pool with a food stand and like there was activities. There was like a frisbee golf course. There's all this stuff because
Mhm.
like they're think about like going away on vacation and all the attractions you would have. You'd have like a pool at a hotel or something like that, and this kind of has it too.
But you're camping.
You're camping, and also it's not quite that close. So for us, it was a hike. We took a pretty good hike,
Hmm.
and also on top of all of the camping things, Miriam is 7 months pregnant right now.
Oh, that's bold.
So
Camping at 7 months pregnant.
so what I was saying at the beginning was we called them and we didn't expect them to say yes because we knew she was pregnant, and they were just like, well, we actually just went camping like last week when we asked them, and we'd be down to go again. So then we ended up going, and you know, she's great. She's also like she's usually just a very fit person. She still runs like
Hmm.
miles a day while she's pregnant. Um,
No.
Crazy, but she absolutely killed it. She was you know running and doing and
Yeah, I don't like running now. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be doing that while you're pregnant.
Yeah, dude. And we hiked like through the whole weekend. We hiked probably like 10, 12 miles in total.
Wow,
She killed it. It was great.
that's solid.
Yeah, it was super fun. But so, and there's two more levels, but there's two more levels for the
All right,
camping.
let's hear about the other levels.
Let's do the second to top is good at camping, goes camping, just doesn't have your own stuff, which is like you know what you need and you could prepare for a camp trip, but you just
Uh,
don't. Like one of my friends goes to festivals and he camps, but he used to camp with his brother's stuff because his brother and he lived in the same house,
mhm.
and now they don't. And so he doesn't have like he never like bought stuff. It just wasn't a priority for him to buy camping stuff, and
Okay, so that would probably be where I'd fall.
he lives in the city, so he doesn't have a place to put it. But you have a place. You have a
I
place.
just because I haven't gone camping in
Right, and
so
you have
long, I just haven't replaced any of my stuff.
exactly. So that, and then like people that actually have their shit and camp regular. So
Yeah.
it just kind of depends. Our friends that we went with, like they regularly do a few camping trips a year.
Hmm.
So we figured
That's
that
cool.
because like we both know what we're doing, and also part of being good at camping is about being down to like hike and walk around outside and spend a bunch of time doing that because
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
it's what you're gonna do when you hike, or it's what you're gonna do when you camp rather. Um,
That and build fires.
that and build fires. We built some good fires, and that's why camping's a good social distance this time activity too, because really hot fire kills everything. So just sit between a really hot fire and you're good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the breath that you're exhaling is just gonna
Just
burn you.
fire.
It's fine.
Have you been out to eat yet?
No, I'm still not. I'm still not ready for that. Especially, so the problem is we're in the city, so like not here because you're like on the sidewalk and there's people walking by you and all that shit. We were talking about this the other day, and we decided like if we were in the suburbs and it was outside, it was just like the restaurant itself and nothing else was
Mhm.
around, that might be okay. But
Yeah,
here,
I'll tell you, it's weird. I've been out. I've been
have
out
you?
to a few different places.
Okay.
Um, I've been out to Cafe Ra to smoke
Okay.
hookah. He has capacity for 28 people outdoors.
Okay.
Um,
He's
and
only he's only outside, right?
only outside right now. Yeah, he's going to be setting up a tent on this, or he's trying to get a permit to set up a tent on the side of the building
Oh wow.
so that he can, if it as it stands right now, if it rains, his night's done. Um, so he is looking into getting a permit to put people on the side of the building. But what's interesting about that, and I actually feel relatively I feel really comfortable going there for a few reasons. Number one, fire, like coals and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
the majority of the stuff that you're touching is involving coals. Uh, Hanny is super diligent about like disinfecting stuff and like,
Yeah, he
you
said
know, the
he was being good about like
well,
keeping.
that was before everything got shut down. Um, and he was just like, yeah, hand sanitizer this, and like he was very good about it. But like tables are spaced apart. Obviously, who's ever working is wearing a mask. And every time you go there, I don't know if this is how much this is going to eat into his bottom line, but every time you go there, you get a new hose that you personally take out of the wrapping.
Are they like and they're like the disposable ones?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I feel super comfortable going there from a hygienic standpoint because everything that you touch is either in close contact with coals that are on fire, or you're the only person who's ever touched it outside
That's
of the people that made it.
that's
Um, yeah, and then they disinfect all the tables when everybody leave. Whenever you leave, like someone comes out with like sanitizer and they wipe everything down and it's all good.
yeah.
Um, I was also at Tommy's on Tuesday, which that was an interesting experience getting food because they were kind of lucky. They converted what was like a beer garden last summer into just purely outdoor seating,
Yeah.
and they probably have if I had to guess, they probably have marginally less capacity than what they had inside. But it's weird because they've got in part of the parking lot, they've got it set up as like a waiting area / beer garden / if you just want to get a drink kind of thing.
Okay.
And then with that, you have to wear a mask to walk up to the bar. They give you disposable cups and all that, which is fine. And then what's weird, the thing that's weird to me about this whole thing is that you have to wear a mask to your table.
Okay.
So when you're walking up, you're wearing a mask. When you sit down, you can take the mask off,
Right.
which makes sense because how are you going to eat with a mask?
Right.
But your mask is now off and you're still, like
So
people are around.
So that's what I see from restaurants here. Like people get there and they sit down and they take their masks off and they're just chilling without masks, but they're still out in public. People are still walking by them on the sidewalk, and like, dude, honestly, living in the city, like I get it. You don't have a place to go outside. Maybe you don't have relatives that are in the suburbs nearby, so you don't get an outside space to hang out in. And like, I understand the motives a little bit, but honestly, for me, I'm good. I don't need to go out yet. Like I'm okay.
Yeah, no, I was at the opposite end of that spectrum. I'm like, not that I want to be reckless with it, but like
I
getting
don't,
out
I
was
don't blame you. Some people like I
I'm
understand the need for it, but I don't think like, and also it depends how much you're doing it. I've seen people that are going out for like every meal every night. If you're just doing it a couple times, like I don't know, whatever.
yeah, I need it out like
I
in
don't.
the worst way.
I don't fucking blame you. It's
um
man, this
so yeah,
it gets crazy.
but it's weird because then you get up to go to the bathroom, you got to put the mask back on, which all
Yeah.
right, fine. I I still feel like the jury's out on the masks in general,
I
um
mean, see, the thing is that at least from everything I read, it's the thing that sucks about it is it's kind of like it just everyone needs to do it thing because it's not like I'm not wearing a mask for me. I'm wearing a mask for you because if I have some shit, it'll stop it from getting to you. So if
yeah.
you wear it, we're good. If neither one of us wears it, like that's not great. But also like has to do with how long you're gonna interact with somebody. So if you're gonna just fucking walk right by them, then you're not interacting with them long enough for anything significant to occur. But like if you're gonna stand there and talk to them face to face, then like that's long exposure time. If one of you has something wrong with you, that's the problem.
Yeah, the thing is, and I don't, I'm not looking to debate the
Right.
merits of everything that we've got going on right now. You know pretty quickly whether or not you've got something going on with yourself. Like if I was feeling marginally like I could potentially be getting sick, I would wait it out before I saw anybody, without a doubt. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the way, like I have I just have a cough. I've had a cough for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I know the difference between that and like I'm getting sick kind of cough. I know the difference between like my allergies because I have two cats in the house and like my nose is congested versus I'm about to get sick kind of feeling. And if like anything is marginally or has if it were to go marginally out of whack, I just wouldn't go anywhere for however long that needed
Yeah.
to
Of
be.
course.
So I don't know. I'm just happy to be getting the fuck out of the house.
Dumb
You know
too.
what I mean?
Uh, Um, yeah, man, I dig that. Um, yeah, and my my only problem with it is like my same problem with so many things, is that like I agree with that, but also at the point I've gotten to, I just don't underestimate people being stupid anymore and people not being able to do that because, like, I've just seen too many people do too much unbelievably dumb shit, just in general, from like when I was watching interns at studios to like actually large scale people doing dumb shit. But it just, I, I don't underestimate that. And so, while I know that and you know that because you're an intelligent person, I had somebody say this to me a little while back, and it's honestly like become one of my favorite things I've ever heard. Uh, Average intelligence is only halfway there, and that means half the people are dumber than that.
That's a good point.
Like,
That's a
come
good
on, man.
point.
How do you argue with that? Now, every time something like this comes up and something
No, you got a good point. I mean,
like
the majority of my interactions have been with people who I feel are uh, trustworthy enough to have not done something stupid.
you judge, man, and it's interesting because Allie and I were talking about this recently. She read this article and she was telling me about how things are very different. A lot of people are more tired now when they seemingly shouldn't be because, like, you're just home all the time. What are you doing? But it's weird
You,
how your decision making has increased. So it makes you more mentally tired. Like, even, and we gave the example because it's what we were doing at the time. We were we were walking the dog.
uh,
We used the example of we were walking the dog, and when we're walking the dog, especially in a city because there's so many people around, like you walk down the street and you see someone else, and so where before you would just keep walking down the street, now all of a sudden you start thinking like, all right, how far away can we get from this person? Are we really
yeah,
going to be that close? Like, should we just go out in the street? Why don't we just swerve around this fucking person? And like, you're constantly making these decisions of like, okay, do I want to go outside? And again, some of this has to do with us living in a city because it's very different. And
yeah. I have to say, like stuff like that, I don't particularly think about.
right, and it's different for everyone because it's just like there is some of that even in terms of, your morning routine has changed before work and like, all right, what am I going to do this morning? Am I going to do my full morning routine or am I going to actually just like sleep up until 5 minutes before I have to start working because I can and all I do is go upstairs and I just work in my fucking pajamas?
You know,
You know,
that's a really good point
that
because
that
in the
one applies
past,
a little bit more.
yeah, that's more universal because like in the past, it's like I have to get up at 5 a.m. I'm going to the gym. I have to, and like you're kind of on like autopilot until about, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
like legitimate decision making.
You get to work and it kind of settles in.
Well,
But
like even like the first portions of work are kind of on autopilot. Like I remember I'd get into the office, I'd make myself a coffee, I'd
check the email.
check my emails, kind of get settled in, plan out my day, stuff like that. And then around 10 o'clock, it's
You
like, okay,
really
how do
don't.
I want to, what do I want to do first?
Right. But now it's almost immediate when you get up. And even when it's little decisions, because obviously, like,
Well,
what am-
decision fatigue is a real thing.
right. So, like, and obviously, what am I going to make myself for breakfast is not a super important decision, but it's just you're making so many more of them so much more often because of this, the situations we all
Mhm.
find ourselves in. And it just, like, it wears you out, man.
Well,
And
that's
it's
why they
crazy.
say, like, if you ever really closely pay attention to what almost every president wears, it's almost identical because they're trying to eliminate that decision from, like, when you think about the decisions that someone like in that level of power needs to make,
Yeah.
they want to limit even down to what you're going to wear that day.
I've read
Um,
I've read articles about how like really successful people do shit like that. Like Mark Zuckerberg has a closet full of the exact same outfit. He wears the same thing every day because that's not something he's wasting brain power on. He's not wasting
Hmm.
brain power on what am I going to wear today. He's just putting on clothes and going to more important things.
Yeah,
It's an interesting concept.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, um, the original reason that I wanted to talk to you tonight was I am considering upgrading the audio. Yeah, as it's ironic that we're talking about coronavirus because and like things kind of going back to normal because as they go back to normal, I want to start doing this thing in person. But I have a single USB mic, and that doesn't really work so great for two people
Right.
in person. I don't really know where to start at all with what I should be looking for, what I should be, how to even go about upgrading from a USB, like what I consider to be a pretty solid mic, to do I buy two of the same mic? Do I like two? Do I just buy another one of these? Do I, you know?
So, uh, I mean, obviously there's a thousand options, but you when you go from a USB to regular microphones, to XLR connected microphones, you use an interface unless you're using like a big fuck recording console or something,
Hmm.
crazy studio setup. Because an interface is going to give you, I think we talked a little about this previously, but an interface is going to give you everything in one box. It gives you mic pre's, it gives you line amps, it gives you a headphone amp, it gives you line outs, potentially gives you other kinds of outputs. It gives you potentially talkback if you are using it for recording.
What do you
Uh,
mean talk back?
like if I have an artist in the booth, I can talk into it and send a signal to their headphones so they can hear me.
Oh, okay.
Um, and it also has a converter in it that's going to be your D to A to D converter, or A to D, D to A. It's analog to digital and then digital.
Hmm.
So it's all that in one box. Right now, your mic is taking care of a lot of
Everything.
that, right? Because it's the microphone and it's, also got a preamp. It's also got a converter going through because it's coming through a
Hmm.
USB, so it's got to get digital somehow, right? Uh, and I don't know. I know some of those you can actually plug headphones into them. So
I
that,
am actually monitoring. I don't know if you could see the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
monitoring through the mic. Yeah.
That's what I thought that was. So, and it gives you a little headphone too. So
Hmm.
that's cool and it very versatile because it gives you everything right there. But you know, in a studio, those are all individual parts because obviously, the less you have a thing doing, the better that thing can do it. So if I
Hmm.
just get one thing that's just a preamp, I can make it really good quality, get really good sound out of it, and then I'm gonna improve my overall sound quality because I hook it up to a preamp to a standalone converter, and all it's doing is converting signal, and then on and on down the line, whatever.
Yeah.
But interface and some XLR cables and some microphones is what you want. The interface will connect USB to your computer, and the mics will connect to the interface.
So where do we start? Do we start by picking out an interface? Do we start by picking out the mic that we want to use?
So you can, I mean, picking out an interface depends on how many mics you're going to need to record and what kind of monitoring and what kind of inputs and outputs you're going to need. Interfaces or excuse me, interfaces are measured in inputs and outputs. So you'll see one of the most popular ones that's out right now that I wish I had invested in this company when all this started because they're selling like friggin' hotcakes. Is Focusrite, which I think is one of the ones I sent you when you had originally asked me this.
Potentially.
It's Scarlett. So this
Yeah, 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 yeah.
one of
Yes.
the most popular ones right now is the 2i2, and that's two inputs and two outputs, right?
Okay.
Um, so that would give you two channels of input and then two outputs that essentially, if you were using them as speakers, would serve as a left and right output.
So, but for the purposes of this, would I be able to use each of those outputs as like, okay, we're sitting across from each other and you can hear my microphone, I can hear your microphone?
Put them in headphones, yes. So
Right.
you could get everyone headphones and you could sit and make it, when we used to record podcasts in the studio, when you watch anything from like Loudspeaker Network and they're in the studio, everyone's wearing headphones because they're recording, you know,
Right.
they're, yeah. So, sorry. Uh, I have my my console app from my interface down here on a little monitor.
Hmm.
You can see it. Oh, wait, let me take this thing out of the picture.
I don't think it really even matters, to be honest with you.
But I have down there my little console app.
Oh, that's
Um,
kind of cool.
yeah, so that's a fun little. I added that for the setup, and it's funny because the computer that I used to have when I was running a laptop, I found an app to
You
use an
may want to
iPad.
adjust your
Yeah, yeah,
camera there.
I'm working on it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So when my friend has this at his studio, and I was looking for an app that would let me connect an iPad as a monitor into my computer, so you can use it as another screen. And
Hmm.
I was running it from my laptop, but the laptop just did not have the power to handle it. And it actually, anyway, the laptop didn't have the power to handle it, and it was doing a bad job. And so when I got the new computer, I was like, okay, this thing can definitely handle it. So now I keep it hooked up, and that's the only thing it does. So I'm just monitoring. I have like a monitor for my interface console, and it just stays right there.
Nice.
So yeah, I dig it. Um,
All right. So we were the
so
Scarlet 2i2 is what you had
Scarlett
just.
2i2, yeah. So that thing, I'm gonna just bring it up. I'm gonna send it to you.
Well,
I have it.
use the share screen.
Use the share. Oh, that's true. All right, hang on. I'll do a little. I'll do a little promotion for somebody I like.
That works too. Yeah.
Oh, you have to turn it on because Zoom is a pain in the ass, and now you actually have to turn it on.
Let's see. All participants can. All right. Go for it now.
All right, so this guy. So this guy, right? Um, this thing is a great. It's got these two.
Yep. Wait a minute. Your screen just kind of.
Oh, hang on.
What's going on?
Did it screw around?
Yeah, it's kind of. There we go.
There we go. All right. So it's got one, two channels, right?
Yep.
These most interfaces are going to use these multi jacks. These things can take a 3-pin 1, 2, 3,
Hmm.
which is an XLR connection. They can take also a 1/4 inch connection, so you could plug. There's this button for instrument. You could plug like a bass or a guitar directly DI into
So
there.
you could plug like if you have headphones with the 1/4 inch.
So not into this. The headphones. So over here, you see
Well,
this.
but in other words, the it would go in and it would
So that
function.
that size jack would go in the middle, but if you were actually going to do headphones into this, you would want to use these,
Right.
right? Because these are just the inputs. So these are the inputs, and they have a gain knob here, and they have this air feature that I know adds some more gain among a few other things. But there are two channels, and then you've got some monitoring inputs. You have a headphone amp down here with a headphone level up in this guy.
So why would you use the outputs on the back as opposed to the headphone?
So this headphone is set up to be a separate headphone feed. When you are recording, you don't necessarily want the same headphones as like, so if I was recording somebody doing vocals, I would have them over in the booth and I would be out in the control room. So I
Hmm.
would be listening through the back outputs going to my speakers, and they would be listening through this headphone output, and it would be a slightly different mix. We could make it a slightly different level. Maybe they want it louder or softer, and that way what I'm hearing and what they're hearing are separate. So we
Okay.
can each have what we need, because if you're recording and you can't hear yourself, or if you're recording and you're hearing way too much of yourself, that's off-putting, that's not good. So you have your own separate headphone amp, and bigger, more substantial interfaces have several of these, so you can potentially make
Okay.
multiple headphone mixes. So if I was recording with like a four-piece band each, and again, if you're doing it in studio, you definitely have this, but some interfaces are big and have this feature where like each individual person could have their own headphone mix, because
Mm,
the drummer wants to hear a little bit more of the bass player, and the bass player wants to hear a little bit more of the singer, so you make them all their own individual mixes.
right.
Um,
Now, how would you have to set something like that up so that the left and right outputs on the back would, like, let's say I'm wearing a pair of headphones, someone else is wearing their own pair of headphones.
so
Um, wouldn't that be,
uh,
wouldn't they only be hearing one microphone?
no, so if you have them coming in, you have the microphones coming in mono, right? But you can have them outputting in stereo. If you have them panned up the middle and outputting in stereo, they're going equally to both outputs, the left and the right. What you'll hear if you plug a headphone into each one of these is you'll hear exactly that. But if you took them and sent one to the left and one to the right, like with panning, you would do
Hmm.
that in your software. If you did that, you wouldn't hear one of them, because now they're going to only one input, and or I'm sorry, only one output, and they're not going to the other.
Okay. Now,
Well,
how does this get to the computer?
this gets to the computer this way. It is a USB-C.
Okay.
So it just connects straight up USB. It should comes with a cable. It's
And
nice.
does that function
Um,
differently than what you're hearing in the line outs?
so what do you mean?
So, for example, if you have it set up so that um, I can hear, you have it set up right down the middle so that both people can hear both their voice and the other person. When it makes it into the computer, will it,
So
are you able to separate the two tracks, or
yes.
is it
So
still, or is that independent of the software you're using?
keep in mind that an interface does all of that stuff, but it does not record. Interfaces are not recorders, so you need some software to pair this with. Um, you know, people are gonna. I'm gonna. I'm looking at you funny on the wrong side of the screen. There we go. Um, people use Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, Cubase, all these softwares, Reaper. Um, and you have to get a software if you're gonna use this, because you have to record into something.
Right.
Um, yeah, you need a multi-track recorder. So Reaper is really good software if you need one. Um,
Okay.
Reaper is not free. The license is very cheap, but also Reaper is like you can use it for free forever. Um, Reaper's super cool, and the company that makes Reaper is actually called Cocos or Cacos or something weird. I don't know. Cacos.
Uh,
I don't remember. Um, here it
so
is.
how are you able to use that for
So
ever?
you can download Reaper on an evaluation basis,
Okay.
and you just keep evaluating. Every time you open Reaper, it pops up like, you know, you are still evaluating Reaper. Do you want to keep evaluating? You wait for it to count to five, or count to do like a 5 second countdown, and then you can click still evaluating and just keep using Reaper.
Hmm.
Um, but also by comparison to most other DAWs, a license for Reaper is only $50 or so,
Yeah.
or thereabouts, which is stupid cheap for a software that is so capable. Reaper, especially compared to a lot of DAWs, is actually uh, pretty intuitive. It's not that hard to use. It's ridiculously customizable. You can set shortcuts and macros for absolutely everything. Um, and you can there's also different like themes and layouts, so you can make it look however you want. Um you can make it look even like other DAWs. There's one
Okay.
for people that are used to Pro Tools, because Pro Tools is like the industry standard for audio professionals.
Okay.
The skin that makes Reaper look and function almost identical to Pro Tools.
That's kind of
So
cool.
yeah, it is. It's man, it's great software. It really is.
Okay. So now we've covered the interface, the software, which seems pretty intuitive. Um, Let me give you, before we get to the microphone portion of this, let me give you an idea of the room that it's going to be in,
All right.
and also show
Wait.
you the kind of background noise that I'll be working with potentially. So
Hold
I'm
on.
up in,
Hold.
so
So
before we paused our recording, we were talking about the mic and the environment that I'm going to be recording in is going to be behind me with, there's a surprising amount of space despite what it looks like.
yeah.
But the thing that I'm most concerned about, because I recorded a podcast in person using two USB mics, and the problem that I had was that they were picking each other up. So there was like a weird echo that I couldn't get rid of because it was on both tracks. So number one, I want to make sure that they are not going to pick, they're sensitive enough to be able to get the sound that I want, but not so sensitive that if I'm talking 4 feet away from somebody else, that their microphone is going to pick up what I'm saying and it's going to, interfere. But on top of that, now let's do a little experiment right now. The HVAC system for my house is up on the 3rd floor where I am right now. And in the wintertime, that's not such a big deal because you can leave the blower off, and the 3rd floor is going to stay nice and warm. In the summer, you can leave the blower off, and the 3rd floor is also going to be very warm. So like currently right now, I've done most of these at night because it's a lot easier to keep the blower off and not die of heat stroke.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn the blower on for a second,
Okay.
and you'll be able to kind of hear what the microphone. Now, keep in mind, I am probably about 15 feet away from where the inlet is.
Okay.
And I would be closer when doing this in person. So I don't know if you can hear
I heard that.
did you hear it now?
No. Do you have all your Zoom s- noise
Let's
canceling shit disabled?
let's check. Hold on. Audio settings. So advanced. Suppress background noise. We're going to disable suppress intermittent background noise, echo cancellation. We have to leave on auto.
Okay, so and keep in mind that like that when you turn that off for this mic, that and more is what you're gonna get. What the fuck?
Just got dark in your room.
Dude. I think somebody was messing with the Hey Google. Shut up, Google.
So I assume right now, before I turn everything back on, you can hear what's going on in the background right now, right?
At least a little. Zoom is always gonna have a little bit of noise suppression. At least
All
you
right.
can't get rid of it. Um,
So for the time being, I'm going to turn everything back on, or at least set everything to auto. Everything is back on auto now.
Zoom does, man, so much work. It's so crazy. it really does sound pretty good.
It does. I agree with you. I agree. Um, so yeah, I'm going to be basically 10 feet. So I'll be roughly 5 to 6 feet closer to the source of that noise, doing this in person. And there's going to be two microphones involved at least. So how
So
do we deal with that?
so there are a
Can I
few,
deal with that?
yeah, I mean there are a few ways to deal with that. First of all, when doing something like that, a certain amount of bleed is inevitable and kind of unavoidable, and it's never going to sound perfect, you know. Um, Depending on what kind of room you're in. If you're in a
Bleed
really
meaning,
bleed meaning like your mic picking up my voice. There's always going to be some of that.
okay.
But when you get a mic, what you do is you get a mic that has a cardioid polar pattern. Polar pattern is if you're looking at the mic, if you're looking at the front of the microphone, the way the microphone picks up signal as you move around the microphone.
So,
And
for example, just to make sure that I understand this properly, on this microphone, the side that I'm speaking into is where I guess it's considered a side address microphone, and
so that
this
yeah.
this is considered the cardioid pattern. Whereas if I flip it around, it's going to sound drastically different, or theoretically, unless I get really close, you shouldn't be able to hear me.
Right. So it's
Right.
and it's and again, it's not that I'm unable to hear you, but the level of sound is going to be dramatically reduced. Right. So you're at the point right now that we call on axis. You're at 0 degrees. You're right in front of the diaphragm of the microphone, which is the
Right.
point. And as you move around the microphone, it starts to tail off. You start to lose certain high frequencies first, and then eventually, like all of the sound reduces in level. Um, and it does pick up some, but depending on the microphone, it picks up significantly less. Some mics are better at this than others, and it really just kind of depends. But what's nice is that microphones, if you position them the right way, so when you would do it sitting across from someone, you would make sure that the backs of the microphones are pointed. The back of my microphone is pointed towards you, and the back of your microphone is pointed towards me, and that's going to reject the most sound. We call the back of the microphone the point of greatest rejection, where there's
Okay.
going to be the least amount of other sound picked up.
So essentially, I would want to, if I, let's say I bought the XLR version of this microphone, I would want to set it up probably, let's assume we're sitting directly across from each other.
Yeah.
I would want to set it up more like this so that it's perfectly, the back of the pattern is directly in front of the back of the
Ideally,
other pattern.
ideally, yes. Although the other thing that you can do is you have to experiment and kind of see what works, because the truth is if you're trying to reject some of the HVAC system as well, you want some of the back pointed towards that. And one of the rules when you're recording in podcasts or in radio that a lot of people go for, it's the reason why my mic is over here and I'm talking to you on a webcam over here and it's fine, because the rule is 45 and 45. So you
Okay.
do 45 degrees right or left and 45 degrees up or down. So when we used to do a lot of mics for podcasts, if we did it on like a stand, it would kind of come like here. And so I would
Right.
talk to you, but the mic would be here. And when we did it on the boom arms that hang, we'd get them like you see people on the radio. If you ever watch people on the radio on TV, because that's a thing,
Sure.
you'll see them adjust microphones with those stands, and they'll usually keep them like over here. When they're talking to someone
Right.
across from them, the mic is right there. If they really want that, crazy, like up close type of sound and that really intimate, sometimes they'll do that thing where like the mic is really up in their grill.
Mhm.
And this is also how like audiobooks are narrated, which is what I do most of the time. And when we do that stuff, they're sitting at like a decent proximity, and we want to be able to kind of have that warmness, and we want to be able to have that nice read, and you get all the enunciation and all that shit, uh,
Right.
which is cool, you know. But depending on what you're doing, you can and what kind of sound you want. Also, some people like you have a pretty low voice, so you don't necessarily need the mic like dead up in your grill if you don't want to. But also, if you do, it sounds really radio announcery, and it's kind of cool. Um, but that all depends. But one of the things that you always learn as a recording engineer is I'm muted for that one.
Ah, smart. This way you don't have to edit it out later.
And no one will know except for the gesture. Maybe I made it harder. I don't know.
And the
Um,
fact that you said you muted.
I don't know. I shouldn't have given my secrets away. Anyway,
It's too late
um,
now.
what's it called? One of the things you learn when you're a recording engineer is that mic placement is one of the most important things, especially when you're recording. Like, I did the most of a band that I've had in the same room at once was an 8 piece. Um,
Mhm.
and they were all in just one giant room recording at the same time. To get a clean recording, you really have to figure out where someone's mic is not picking up or is picking up the least amount of everyone else that it can.
Mhm.
It's inevitable to get drums in everything. Drums are fucking loud. You can't keep drums out no matter how much rejection
Sure.
the mic has. Like drums are loud.
They're just loud.
You know what I
It is
mean?
what it is.
Right. So you work around it, A certain amount of bleed can be cool if you use it the right way. It's natural when we hear stuff. If you're listening to a concert, obviously everything bleeds together when it comes out from the speakers, when it comes out like everything
Yeah.
is you're hearing all of that, especially if you're in a venue and you're not that far away, which may never happen again. Who the fuck knows? But um it's
Oh God, I hope you're wrong
I
and
hope
that
no,
it.
I don't want to be right about that. I want to go back. I really do. I want to go back. I miss concerts so bad. I've been watching virtual shows, which I appreciate the people that do them so much because that's cool and it must be weird to play for people but for no one because by
It's
yourself.
funny that you bring that up because I've been noticing on Twitch there's a lot of like DJs that are popping up on Twitch now,
Yeah.
and watching them like have like a virtual setup, and they're like they even like they'll have like a mic that they'll pick up and talk into when they want to talk to their stream,
Yeah, yeah.
as if like they're physically there.
Right.
And I'm like, I know what. So the last podcast I did, uh, prior to recording, we were just kind of talking. He's like, I feel like I'm watching a stream right now because I've got the hue lights and my computer in the background and all
Yeah,
that. And I'm
yeah.
like, I know what this is like for me. And then I've watched it and I'm like, okay, I can kind of like I get it. And then I'm like, I started thinking about it and I'm like, that's got to be weird at first, at least for people who are uh, recording or performing music for a virtual crowd that not only can you not hear them, but you can't even see them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you got to like act all like, oh, yeah, hyped. And
I mean, if you're
they're
gonna,
like jumping all around. And I'm like, wow, that
and I thought,
I think a lot of people I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of,
well, and even like fucking, I thought about that with stand-up comedians at the beginning, and like John Oliver and shit like that, where like they're still doing their thing, but there's
yeah,
there to
there's no
laugh when they laugh
crowd.
at the joke, so they just like pause for a few seconds of silence, then keep going.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's cool that everyone's kept doing it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, uh,
anyway,
yeah.
oh wait,
Anywho,
well,
no, I was just going to say, I couldn't imagine having this happen even 5 years ago,
oh man,
6 years ago, before, obviously there's still a lot of kinks that we're working out with video conferencing and stuff like that.
it's so
But
accessible now.
yeah, it's way more accessible than it was even 5 years ago.
I know.
And I can't imagine what it would be like to have to go through this. I mean, there was Skype. as I'm thinking about it. Like there was
Yeah,
Skype and
yeah.
like there
There
was
were. I
stuff, but
mean,
like
I have to go
it
back
was
a little further than that, but not much. And I know what you
but
mean.
like I
Maybe
think about like Skype at that time, if I'm not mistaken, was it was a 1-to-1. It had to be 1-to-1.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there
There,
was not many solutions for multiple people conferencing.
right. So like you could do video calling, but it would
Yeah.
just be this.
Well, and like also, FaceTime I think was the thing, but it was you like had to do it from the phone or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
And you had to be connected to Wi-Fi, and you had like there was all. It was a thing, but like
It was not nearly as accessible.
right, like you couldn't do it if you were out. Like
Yeah.
if I was at the store and you were at home, I would have to go find a Wi-Fi network to connect to you.
When
And
we went,
also, what's that?
when we went camping last weekend, um, our friends, one of his friends was getting married that weekend, and obviously they couldn't have the wedding, so they did it over Zoom. So
Hmm.
Saturday, before we went hiking, they sat after breakfast and they watched their friend's wedding on Zoom, pulled it up on their phone while we were in the woods in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that 5 years ago that wouldn't have happened.
And then we went hiking and they were able to see their friends get married, and that was cool.
That's cool.
Like that's stuff like that is cool, man. And
Yeah.
honestly, like the truth is that's something that if you can't be there even under normal circumstances, like now people know that's a thing. We should really be using that anyway because, you know,
Why not?
why not?
Why not?
Why would you not be? Like it makes so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, the
So
microphone setup.
we were talking about in venues and like recording it,
Yeah.
multiple things. There's always going to be bleed, and that's the case anytime you have more than one mic, right? So the goal is to position them in such a way that you're going to get the most amount of pickup of the signal that you want and the least amount or the most amount of rejection of signals that you don't want. Um, there are plenty of mics. A lot of the mic that you have is a condenser mic, and the mic that I have is a condenser mic.
I was actually just about to ask, is condenser versus dynamic
So
something that I should be considering yet?
yeah, I mean, as you figure out what mics you want, like that's something to consider always. And there's benefits to each. Condensers, they have a little bit more detail in them. They sound really good. They're not quite as rugged though. And if you're gonna like take the mics places, you want something that you're gonna be able to carry around, and a lot of dynamic mics do that.
Mm,
The SM58, which I sent you, the SM57 to
yeah.
58 are pretty much the same mic, save for the windscreen. Um, they are great mics. They're $100. They are not anything like unbelievably special, but you'll never go to a recording studio that doesn't have at least a few of them.
Hmm.
Because they're just straight up good mics. Like they do their job really well. I have used one of those mics on almost every sound source that I can come up with that I've recorded, from human vocals to drums, guitars, bass, pianos, like stringed instruments, wind instruments. They're great for like trumpets and shit because they can handle a lot of SPL, a lot of sound pressure. So
Okay.
for something like a trumpet, which is, as any recording engineer that's ever done it will tell you, the loudest thing on the earth. Because they're so much fun. And when you get a really good trumpet player, it's great. But like, dude, they're so loud to record. Um, but one of those mics is really good because they take that high SPL really well. They
Hmm.
handle it, and they still give you good sound. So
Now, are
especially
those both dynamic or condenser microphones?
so the Shure SM58 mic is a dynamic. It's a moving coil dynamic mic, and
Okay.
it's it's a great choice. And people use it for podcasts, and they use it for pretty much anything you can think of. It's never going to do you bad.
So, what's the difference between dynamic and condenser?
So a condenser mic, the um, the diaphragm of a dynamic mic. There are two types of dynamic mics. There are moving coil dynamic mics and ribbon mics. The diaphragms of them are ribbon mics have a piece of corrugated metal running down the middle of them, and the diaphragm of a moving coil mic is actually a metallic coil with a magnet in the middle, and it moves. And as the diaphragm vibrates, sound gets generated.
So
Um,
basically, that's to me that sounds like the exact inverse of a speaker.
Pretty much. That's
Okay,
exactly what it is because a speaker and a microphone are just the same thing in two different directions. And
makes sense.
that's where engineers get sub kick mics. One of the best things we do at drums, and you remember that giant fucking speaker I took from you at one point, which is
Yeah.
actually still in my parents' garage. Um, if you take speakers and you wire them, essentially you wire them in reverse, you can turn them into a microphone.
Okay.
Microphones pick up low frequency based on the size of their diaphragm. The bigger the diaphragm of the microphone, the better it can pick up low frequencies. So for a kick drum, if you can put a microphone on it that's, let's say, the size of a 7-inch speaker, it's going to sound freaking deep and punchy and
Right.
giant. And that's what we call a sub kick mic. And a lot of people, if you have ever gone to a show and you've seen a drummer that has what looks like a little drum in front of their bass, in front of their kick drum,
Yeah.
actually a speaker in there, and that's serving as a sub kick mic, which is making their drum shake your ribs,
Hmm.
because that's picking up all those super low things and drive,
Yeah. Okay.
which is cool as shit.
Uh,
So that's yeah. So that's what a moving coil mic is. A condenser mic has in it the diaphragm is actually a capacitor.
okay.
Because capacitors need charge to work, that's one of the reasons that a condenser mic needs phantom power. So if you're on that interface, that thing that says 48V, there's a little switch on it that would say 48V, and that would be phantom power that would
Okay.
send
So
charge.
for all condenser mics, you have to have that on.
So for most condenser mics, you have to have that on. Some of them have it built in now
Okay.
because they live in the future. There are various types. There's the short answer is that with audio gear, there's not an always anymore because people are building all kinds of things. There used to be, you never put phantom power to a ribbon mic, but now there are companies that build ribbon mics that require phantom power because why not?
Because why not? Yeah.
So there's no always rules, but most of the time, yes, condenser mics are going to require those power.
Okay.
Um, so and they do sound really good. Condenser mics are very detailed. They tend to be what people use for the clearest. When you see people recording with those big freaking mics in like music videos and shit like that, those are like
Right.
condensers. Um, they don't always have to be hung upside down. That is a myth. But they do look cool when they're hung upside down, so that's why they do it in a lot of videos.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but it's not entirely necessary. Only some of them, not all of
Some
them.
of them actually require being hung upside
Well,
down.
not that they require, but some of them are tube mics. Some condensers are tube based, so inside they have instead of like I don't I'm not as good at electronics as I should be.
No, it's fine.
But they have tubes, and because the tubes heat up, you don't want the heat traveling towards the diaphragm. So if you turn them upside down, the heat of the tubes will travel away.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you would hang one of those upside down. A condenser like this doesn't need to be hung upside down because it doesn't have a tube in it. It's not getting hot. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You can hang it upside down for function, for fashion, for the way it
Sure.
looks. This is coming in from the side because that's how my mic stand is, and whatever. Uh,
Right.
but it doesn't have to be hung upside down. Tube mics also don't have to be hung upside down. It's just better for the diaphragm if they are. So if you're going to use it for like a long time, maybe put it upside down because it's better for the mic overall.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, is any one or the other better at helping block out the ambient sounds that you might
So
not want to pick up?
dynamic mics are going to have a slightly less detailed pickup, and ordinarily they're going to be used a lot of times. When you go to live shows, um, oh, hang on, stretching.
Should I pause?
No, I'm good. My back just did weirdness. Um, so when you go to live shows, you see dynamic mics a lot of the time. The SM58 is one of the most popular mics in the known world, and when you go to shows, you see it all over stages. It's usually vocal mics, or they'll put it on guitars, or they'll put it on snare drums, or all kinds of different
Hmm.
stuff. And it's because one of the reasons is because it doesn't pick up the rest of the sound that well.
Okay, so it's
It
only
does have
really going to pick up.
Or it does have it does have the way I should say it. That was a really bad way to say it. Let me
I
say
think
it.
I understand what you meant, though.
It has the better way to say it is it has a it has a tighter cardioid pattern. So
Okay,
it doesn't pick up quite as much going around it. It kind of stays in a little bit tighter as it wraps to the back, as opposed to having a larger pickup area.
right. That makes sense. Um, what else do we need to know about setting up and the audio setup for something like a podcast? What
So,
type of things do I need to think about in terms of the room?
so you want to one of the things that you have to remember, and things that like people forget when they're recording music a lot of the time, is that they don't go in the room and listen to the people play in the room. They don't listen to the drums in the live room and see what it sounds like, because even though it's really loud, like that's what's going to tell you what you're supposed to hear on the other side.
Hmm.
You know, what you hear come out of the speakers when you're recording shouldn't be wildly different than what you hear going in on the other end.
Maybe just seems a little
Sometimes,
bit more quiet.
right, well, like sometimes you're trying to make it sound different, and that's cool, but like for, a good clean recording, it shouldn't really sound that much different. Certain mics can enhance the sound. Mics have all different frequency response curves. And so some mics will raise up the low end a little bit. So they'll make you sound a little bit more, present and nice and stuff like that. And some mics kind of roll that off. So they're better for certain things.
Hmm.
Um, but that all kind of just depends on what you want. But getting a good, clean recording, you gotta just know what you want to hear, because microphones just pick up, if it sounds good to your ears, it's going to sound good in the mic
Yeah, for
within
sure.
within reason. If you're and that part of that is knowing what to pay attention to, because like if you go to certain spots in the room, you can hear where it's a little more echoey than others if you really
Right.
listen out and you listen for the right things. So that's not where you want to put the mic. If you go into a part of the room where it sounds like, oh, this is good, like it doesn't sound too echoey, this is, you know, sounding as tight as I want it, and it sounds like a good conversation that's not gonna sound like we're in a freaking auditorium.
I have a feeling based on where I want to set everything up. So between the couch and that screen behind me, I feel like generally speaking, there's not too much echo. Based on the fact that one person is going to be facing that screen, which is probably, I would assume, is going to absorb some of the sound, and then someone else is going to be facing the
Well,
couch.
you could even do the yeah. I mean, couches are great sound absorbers. It's one of the reasons I like having a bed. This is a bed couch. It's a bed, but I kind of turn
Also
it
known as a futon.
also known as no. This is an actual bed.
Oh, okay.
I just like put a shit ton of pillows on it and made it into couch like. Um,
Right.
but mattresses are great because they're really thick and dense and they absorb a lot of sound.
Hmm.
And that's why I have the panel decoration behind me, which I am actually going to be upgrading soon. This room is going to be like exponentially quieter because I'm getting
So
4-inch panels.
with those panels, is that something that's even worth considering for something like this?
Um, so certain panels, you can get decent panels that aren't that expensive, and for like really good, for like studio quality stuff, you're gonna spend a bit of money. But to get
Sure.
like just something that's gonna quiet your room a little bit, it's not that hard to do. And you can do it without, you know, too much work if you just put a panel behind each person. Like if you were to sit the other way and you put a panel on the door and a panel on the wall, that's gonna help right there.
Right.
You know, um, it kind of just depends. Although, like you said, if the HVAC is over there, so you don't necessarily want to.
Yeah,
Like,
one of the mics would be
throw
aimed essentially at the HVAC in that direction, so I don't
throw
want
those,
to point it there.
but then throw those panels up anyway because like it would help to have one on the door that would keep some of the HVAC noise out and also help with
That's a good point.
like those are great. I'll find I have a link for them. I'll send you because I'm looking myself. I'm gonna upgrade since I am upgrading.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there a specific thickness that they should really be from
so
where to where they'll
they
go from
they
decorative
do
to
like
functional?
they do like 2 inch, 4 inch, 6 inch. So all of this stuff, if you get like serious sound panels, they're all made with fiberglass insulation. Owens Corning fiberglass insulation. Remember that episode of Family Guy?
I
Was it?
do remember that. That's exactly what I was thinking of when you said Owens Corning fiberglass insulation.
I love you, man. Nobody else can ever come up with that, but every time when I was in school and I heard someone say Owens Corning fiberglass insulation, I would laugh in my head. Oh, that Family Guy,
I
and
couldn't I couldn't remember exactly what show it was, but I was like, that was in a cartoon that I used to
because the
love.
Pink Panther was on
Yeah, yes, yes,
and his
yes.
his lungs were filled with Owens Corning fiberglass.
Fiberglass insulation.
But Owens Corning fiberglass insulation is the best stuff, and that's the stuff they use for sound panels. So
So
it's
like the ones that you see that I'm seeing behind you, what are they made of? Are they
these
fiberglass?
these are just foam.
Okay.
What I'm gonna get are fiberglass panels that are gonna be. Um, I'm still deciding how big they're gonna be. I'm thinking probably 24 by 48. They're gonna be pretty big mothers. Um,
Oh, so they're not anything like these foam panels that
No,
we're seeing behind
they're
you.
gonna be they're gonna be serious. They're gonna be 24 by 48 and they're gonna be 4 inches. Like 4 inch foam, big. Like this room's gonna get real quiet real fast.
Is it going to be like the kind of quiet where you walk in the room and you're like clearing out your ears because
Well,
there's
maybe
no echo at all?
maybe not quite that quiet. But it is gonna get very quiet in here, and I am excited for that because right now it's like, it's quieter than everywhere else. You can tell it's at least quieter than every other room.
Hmm.
But once I get that kind of stuff, it will be very quiet.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
So one or two of those panels in this room would probably be,
So one or two of those panels is going to be helpful.
yeah,
That room is because you have that ceiling, it's kind of both good and bad because that ceiling is like it's not flat, so it's not going to.
yeah. So I don't know if it's being picked up on the video, but behind me on this side of I had to make sure that with the way the video is mirrored, I was raising the right hand.
Yeah.
Um, on the ceiling directly over my head is angled because of the roof line, and then about here, which is off camera, it's about an arm's length off camera. The ceiling becomes flat again.
Right.
Um, so
Which
that I'm sure changes
which is an interesting.
stuff.
It's and like one of the things that you look at for a room when you're designing a studio is parallel surfaces and trying to limit parallel surfaces because parallel surfaces cause standing waves and that's not a good thing. And
So you're saying the fact that that is angled like that helps deaden sound.
uh, so not dead in sound, but it does help redirect it.
Okay.
So you there are going to be some spots up there that are better than others, and I would honestly, when you're setting up, like try the mic in a few different, even as you move on, if you're going to be next to the door, like on the axis, even as you move a few feet left and right, because as if I'm like miking drums or something like that, like even centimeters are going to matter when I'm moving
Hmm.
shit around.
Right.
So move the mic a little bit and see if there's any real measured difference and see what kind of pickup it gets, especially with two people. Because if you've ever been in one of those, like, I forget which museum in New York does this, but it's like the Met or the Guggenheim, I don't know, where if you're standing on one end and someone else is standing on the other end in just the right place, you can hear each other talking because of how it reflects off the ceiling and lands exactly in that spot.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah. So,
I don't think I have any spots in this room that are like that.
well, and I'm not necessarily saying that you would, but like just
No, I understand what you're
never
saying.
know
I
how
don't
you
think,
move.
even if I did, I doubt that it would be as pronounced as that.
Well, it's right. It's not going to be quite that bad, but there are going to be better and worse spots. So like just it's always worth it to spend a couple minutes just like move a little bit and see what really sounds the best.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
if someone's near the couch, couches are helpful. They're big, they catch a lot of shit. Um, so yeah.
Cool. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
This has been very helpful for me and hopefully for everybody else that is interested in upgrading their setup, starting their first setup, getting into basically anything
Yeah, dude,
sound related.
I should get an endorsement. We should get an endorsement deal for this from our studio. But
Yeah.
Focusrite makes a great interface, and their Focusrite is one of those companies that they make solid products overall. They have some really high end stuff,
Mm,
but a lot of their stuff is like this. A lot of what they put into, I think now is I think this series. Because it just like this comes in packages with mics, and it's great. It makes it so easy to record at home, and especially for like singer songwriters and now apparently voiceover artists who need to do some stuff at home. They're all buying this and
yeah.
being able to have their own setup.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of even like streamers and YouTubers and podcasters are using. I've seen what you brought up the way before you brought it up,
Yeah.
and I always just kind of wrote it off because I didn't know anything about it, and it was like the Amazon choice, whatever. When I would go online, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know if I just the fact that it said Amazon choice, I
I
was like,
know that drives me away from stuff too, but you can't let it fool you because this one's actually a solid product.
Well, that's exactly why I went to you and said, "Hey, what do you?" I think I pulled up some other random one, and you're like, "It's very medium." I think was the
Yeah,
term that you
yeah,
used,
that I
and then you steered me back towards that, and I was like, "Oh, I guess Amazon got it right on that one."
yeah. Sometimes they do because this one is solid, and the truth is like you need it. It sucks to say, and I hate to endorse things with this attitude, but like you need it to be good enough. When you're doing stuff like this, like if when you're recording, high budget albums and you're recording like when we're recording whenever we have like celebrity narrators or anything like that,
Mm,
excuse me. Um we always want to do it in the studio. We want to get it in the best possible environment because then we can make it sound like absolutely pristine, you know? But for like professional narrators that now have to record at home and voiceover artists and, everyone else that's doing all of this stuff, you need quiet and you need good quality that this gets you. You don't need like individual pieces of everything when you're just doing it like that because
well,
it's just getting your voice.
right,
It's
and
not quite that dynamic of a sound like recording a cello or recording a piano or recording something like that.
sure,
You really needed to get a crazy range of sound with accuracy.
Yeah, and like what's funny is like you mentioned when you're like, well, if budget doesn't matter, just get the SMB7. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Um, but for budget aside,
Yeah.
for what I'm using it for, when you with compression on YouTube, when I'm live streaming these interviews on Twitch, and then even on Spotify, I've done a heavy amount of research on that microphone in particular, and the differences are they're there, but they're so hard to hear. Like
Yeah.
I really, you could probably hear them because you got a very trained ear. Um, I struggle to hear differences, and like I have to listen back and forth multiple times. And the reality is, I'm not going to do that when I'm listening. Like if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm not going back and listening to, oh, is it, you know, marginally better or worse?
Such it is
Um,
with most people, such as it is, it's something that I think a lot of people have been realizing now, and it's both kind of helpful and kind of unfortunate because, like, as an audio professional, I have to be disappointed by that, because it's just like people accepting lesser quality. It's why, the fact that people spend most of their time listening to music like on their phones and on shitty earbuds now is the reason why people can get away with not always going to a studio to mix their work, or not always
mhm.
going to a professional engineer to mix their work, and just getting like a producer mix, or getting, just doing the mix themselves and getting a good mastering, or like whatever they're doing. Because when people don't listen to it in great quality, you know and on the flip side, when you listen to something that's great quality, if you listen to, a Bruno Mars album, if you listen to anything like that, he's just one of my favorites. That last album he put out when he did 24 Karat sounds unfreaking believable. But if all you've ever heard that through is an iPhone speaker, yeah, it's a good album and it's cool music and it sounds pretty good, but you can't get
Yeah.
the full effect because you've never heard the things that sound really good about it.
Yeah.
So
And I think that I realized that when I got the theater set up behind me and I could actually hear,
shit you
like,
never heard before.
right. And not even just like the location of it, but just it sounds so much different on a proper setup as opposed to just hearing it through the speaker on the TV, which are getting worse and worse and worse as TVs get more and more thin.
Yeah, and also
Um,
because it's, theoretically and technically, right, any speaker can reproduce any frequency. There's only so many frequencies the human ear can hear, whatever. I think we talked about that last time.
yeah,
But theoretically any speaker can reproduce any frequency, but it's not about the speaker reproducing the frequency. It's not just about that. It's about how accurately can it reproduce the frequency and with how much level behind it. Because some speakers, even some studio monitors, they sound really good, but if you turn them really loud, they start to break up and then they don't sound as good.
right.
Some better quality ones can hold their clarity even up to high levels, and that's why people choose them. Um, but that's one of the things with better quality speakers like this, like the system you have. I've heard it. It sounds so good. It's crystal freaking clear, and it reproduces such that you can hear more, not just more of the frequency, but you hear it in better quality and you hear it
Yeah.
more clearly, and so it really pops out at you. I forget. Oh shit! I forget what we were watching up there. It might have been a video.
There's a few things that we've watched.
I know we've. I forget if it
I
was a movie. I don't know. Might have been one of the John Wick
I
movies.
was just about to say John Wick is one of the few movies at the time that had Dolby Atmos,
Yeah.
and they
But
used
a whole separate
the
conversation
rain.
about Atmos.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But they used the rain was the best time to hear
and
the sound from above you, and it
like
just sounds so good.
listening to it, and especially as like somebody, somebody who understands that, and as like somebody who likes sound design, um, the ability to get like even rain to sound really good and sound like it's raining by you. So it's not just like some rain sound effect, but it actually like you can feel the weight of it hitting the roof.
Yeah.
Like that. A lot of that is achieved almost entirely through sound, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
totally.
and it's a really cool thing when you get a system. When I worked at Engine Room, the mastering suite was one of my favorite rooms to hang out in because mastering systems are like for the most specific and the most detailed listening. And so the system in that studio was custom built to the room. The speakers were massive and unbelievable. And we always used to go in there and say, like, if you can't hear it in this room, it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
you know. And when we would like check mixes and we would get mastering done, we would hear it in there and just be like, all right, well, listen to it here because if you don't hear the problem here, it doesn't exist because you can hear absolutely everything on those speakers.
Yeah.
Sick.
That's solid.
It really is. But you know, all different things to consider when you're getting your own system. I'm trying to upgrade my speakers soon too, but
Yeah.
we can talk about it.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm looking
I'd
for
love to do a follow up and hear about that.
I'm looking for something interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, man.
But cool. Thank you again.
Yeah, dude. It's always a pleasure.
Hopefully, the next time we do this, it'll maybe be in person.
Yeah, well,
Maybe. We'll see.
you can only hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great.